Last night I did a review of Vladimir Nabokov's book of essays and other occasional pieces called Strong Opinions, and I said I read that because I mostly wanted to learn about what he thought and how he approached what I said was maybe his most famous novel, which is the book that I'm going to review in this video. That novel, of course, is Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. I'm not really going to spend a lot of time summarizing this book or talking about what happens to the characters. Everyone knows about Humbert Humbert. Everyone knows about Dolores Hayes and Lolita. What I really want to say in this video is a bit about the kind of reactions that Lolita gets from a certain type of reader. And Nabokov certainly didn't, when he decided to write Lolita, he certainly didn't make it easy on himself when he chose as his hero or anti-hero the, what I guess you could call a sex offender, basically, Humbert Humbert. I wish there was a less clinical sounding word, but pedophile doesn't exactly seem to fit the bill either. With most novels that I read, I try to include some plot and character synopsis, but I think everyone knows it to some degree. So what I'd like to focus on here, like I said, are the reactions that this novel gets, and maybe throw in a bit about what he says about Lolita in some of the interviews that Nabokov presents in Strong Opinions. Statistically speaking, the ratings, at least on one of the sites on which I post my reviews, which is called Goodreads, aren't too anomalous. About 14% of the reviews, as of the time that I wrote this review, have bothered to assign a rating, gave it either 1 or 2 out of 5 stars. So 14% of the people that rated it at all gave it 2 or fewer stars. And what I find most interesting is that the vast majority of them have damned this book for just one reason: the moral character of Humbert Humbert. And I find this really odd, since no one says Crime and Punishment is a horrible book because its protagonist, its hero, or again anti-hero, Raskolnikov, is a murderer, or because Charles Dickens' Oliver Twist is an amateur pickpocket. No one damns those books because of perhaps the moral failings of their main characters. What is it about Humbert that sets people off towards such a reaction by judging the book by the actions of its protagonist instead of the quality of the writing itself? I'm not quite sure I know the answer to that. I'm sure it has something to do with the subject matter, but it still leaves me scratching my head a bit. And since everyone already knows what Lolita is about, who picks this up knowing that they're going to assign it such a low rating, or going to tell people in public forums like this and Amazon and Goodreads that they hated it so much? Because you certainly know what it's about before you pick it up. If you're actually interested in giving this book the attention that it deserves, and not just sanctimoniously trashing it to, convince us that you're really, really not a fan of man-on-child sex, I don't know, I suggest going to Strong Opinions and seeing what Nabokov has to say about the novel. Like I said in the review of Strong Opinions, the first 2/3 of that book has the interviews. The last third talks mostly about some reviews of poetry. It has some more abstruse academic stuff in it, some articles about chess and lepidoptery. That will interest most people, but as a reader of his fiction that wanted some insight into that in particular, I went to the interviews. In it, in those interviews, he clearly explains that he's not interested in your or anyone else's sense of moral propriety. He hates the novel of ideas or social commentary parading as fiction. And if you take Nabokov at his word, or most other modern novelists that have spoken about what they feel about writing fiction, just because someone writes about a character is not an endorsement of that character's behavior. Needless to say, Dostoevsky was not saying that murdering your landlord is the correct thing to do morally when Raskolnikov did that. Dickens wasn't saying that it was okay to be a pickpocket. If you're among the people who apparently have difficulty understanding this and accuse Nabokov of writing about, as people on other sites have done, and this is a direct quote, a disgusting man, who described Nabokov as being a disgusting man using beautiful language, I think you should heed what he has to say in his interviews. Though my personal favorites of these readers, and I use the word reader rather loosely, are those who claim to be disturbed by the novel. And some of these low reviews with their comical attempts at thinking in those reviews are really quite interesting and humorous. My own opinion about this book is, and it's especially of its canonical status, I guess, is that much of that status is a result of the subject of the book itself. Without the Humbert-Lolita dynamic at its center, I think this novel would have been just another Nabokov novel. And when I say just another Nabokov novel, I don't mean bad. I don't mean even mediocre. I think Nabokov deserves his reputation. But this novel, when you say Nabokov, Lolita immediately pops into people's minds. And really, from reading the novel, there's no particular reason why this should be considered the best or the go-to Nabokov novel. When I say just another Nabokov novel, I mean stylistically complex and linguistically playful and full of puns and all of those things that we love, if we do love, that we love Nabokov for. But I don't think that it would have the popular reputation that it does without that Humbert-Lolita dynamic going on. And I think that the wordplay and Nabokov's obvious slogophilia and playfulness are really on display here, but it's not really something I think I would be jumping to read again. Then again, I'm of a school that isn't reactionary when it comes to novels of ideas, like Nabokov is so eager to tell us in Strong Opinions. In fact, I'm rather fond of the idea of a novel of ideas, and enjoy reading fiction that talks about social commentary and politics and ideas and philosophy and all of that good stuff. The point here is that before criticizing fiction, or rather, much more shallowly and uselessly criticizing its protagonist for his or her actions, we should actually get to know what the writer thinks about the job of fiction itself and what it's supposed to do. This isn't to say that you have to agree with it, but it'll certainly save you from posting something embarrassing on YouTube or Amazon or whatever other site you happen to be sharing your review on in the future. A few words about Vladimir Nabokov's Lolita.